Welcome to the Cover Your Assets podcast, a show for the physician who understands the importance of protecting everything you've worked so hard to achieve. If you're ready to find the peace of mind that only financial security can bring, let's get started. Here's your host, Billy Gwaltney.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of the Cover Your Assets podcast. I'm your host, Billy Gwaltney, and as always, it's really good to be with you. In today's episode, we're covering the first session of a recent educational series I did and recorded. It's called Cover Your Assets from All Angles. It's a 4-part educational series with 2 financial advisors where I interview them regarding financial planning matters for physicians. This first session is an introduction and talks about different financial mindsets, understanding financial mindsets. Hope you find this helpful. Thank you as always for your time. I'm grateful to be here and be a part of this and kind of introduce this educational series on financial planning, financial advising. With me today are 2 gentlemen that I've gotten to know. John Navin is a financial advisor based in Nashville, and Kyle Christensen is based in Texas. So Nashville and San Antonio, 2 cool places to be. I am grateful to be here. I want to give kind of a brief overview of why I'm doing this and kind of what I did, just to give you, those of you, maybe you know this, I don't know, but I decided to set this series up, and John and Kyle graciously agreed to join and be a part of it. And I sent the invitation to all of my clients just saying, hey, if you want to sign up and be on be a part of an educational series, I would love to let you meet some men that are good at this and pick their brain and learn some do's and don'ts when it comes to financial planning. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. My role here is as a moderator. And the question I've gotten since I sent out the invitation was, why are you doing this? And I think that's a fair question. That's a really good question. I want to take a minute and answer that from the heart. And it starts with me just confessing that God's been really good to me. Sometimes I say he's been stupid good to me. I love what I do. For some reason, I really enjoy working with physicians about disability insurance. I love it. I look forward to it every day. I can have dozens of conversations every day, trading emails and texts and so forth. And I really enjoy it. It's my sweet spot. I was talking to a surgeon yesterday and she said, I like how you geek out on this stuff. And I was like, wow, I've not been told that. I like how she said that. I just thought that was neat. Yeah, I geek out on disability insurance. And it's something if the Lord willing, I'll probably do it till I die. I really enjoy it. And working with thousands of physicians across the country, one thing I realized is, yes, I love what I do and I love who I do it with. But I've accumulated something over the time, and that's probably 10 to 15,000 hours of private, direct conversations with physicians about some really important things related to their need for disability insurance, why it's important as they progress from trainees to attendings, protecting their most important asset, which is your ability to get out of bed and go do what you do. And the decision points around that. Medical history sometimes gets in. So we end up having conversations. And over the course of time, I start getting asked questions about other things. I help most clients with life insurance as it's needed. But I get asked other questions about umbrella insurance, about financial planning, about retirement planning. Hey, how do you save for college? Do you know anybody? And it didn't take too long for even me to get to where I noticed a pattern of there being, the same dozen or so questions where there's significant need and some anxiety around their inability to find the answer and what to do. Because my clients and those of you that are on here, you work your tail off. You're really, really good at what you do. Spend a lot of time learning to get better at it. And that's a good thing. And we need more of you, not less of you. And in the meantime, you've got to figure out how to plan for this jump from, kind of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and maybe a lot of debt to becoming an attending, where the decisions have significant ramifications because the numbers get bigger and you've got this window of 20 to 30 years to knock it out of the park. And if you do it right, you can do that. You can knock it out of the park, but you're not going to drift there. You're not going to accidentally find yourself there. You're going to have to be intentional about that. And I have found that intentionality is where it gets, at least in conversations, that's where it gets kind of nerve-wracking. And so, having been in the financial services business since 1991, I started when I was in college. I've met a lot of people. I've seen the financial services industry from the belly up and from the inside out. And I've come away going, wow, I know a lot. I know a lot of people. I know the really good people. I also know some people that are not so good, and the ones that are not so good outnumber the ones that are good. And I don't mean good as in people. I mean from either a competence standpoint or maybe a character standpoint. I mean, there's some gaps. And so I've just sensed, the good Lord saying, hey, shepherd them well. You've got an opportunity to connect people that otherwise wouldn't be connected, like you meeting Kyle and John and hearing from them, from their heart, without them knowing who you are, having any angle in this other than providing education, and hopefully leaving you better than I found you, and myself better than, along the way as well. And that's the why for this. I know some amazing people that can help you get where you want to go. And I'm hoping to maybe create a platform or community where that can happen. There can be some other topics that we cover at some point down the road as well. And so this is the first step toward that. I'm just compelled to see where this goes and offer you an opportunity to learn something that you may not learn otherwise. So that's it on the why behind it. What I would like to do now is transition to our topic today in this series, which is financial planning. And we're going to cover four sessions here, calling this Cover Your Assets from All Angles. The name of my podcast is Cover Your Assets. And we're just thinking not just from disability insurance standpoint, but from every angle. What does that look like? From a financial planning standpoint, let me just go through the sessions here. So the first session is today, introduction, which is what we're doing now. And then understanding financial mindsets. We're going to talk about the mindsets because there are a couple of broad mindsets that we need to cover first. Then we'll go into the why behind the decisions you make, financial goals, and the values that drive what those goals are. Session 3 will be kind of in the nitty-gritty of tools and strategies. We'll be covering some of the tools and strategies all along the way, but you got to build the foundation first before you get to those kind of things. And then the last session, getting into protection, asset protection, and growth, and how you make decisions and where you go from here. Maybe this is oversimplifying it, but in my experience being around financial planning and financial services people, having done it in the past, I don't do it now, don't want to do it now, but being around people that do it, I sense that there are two broad categories of financial planning. One is the best name I could come up with is like a traditional approach to financial planning. You kind of do think a lot of what you'll hear, and John Navin is an expert in that. It's been doing it for a really long time. And some of that he'll cover there, you may have heard. And then there's this non-traditional approach, which is where Kyle specializes, where it's a little bit different. And we're going to talk about how it's different. And there can be some overlap there. There can be some both. But the key is to make sure that you're at least understanding these different mindsets and which one you're drawn to more than the other. Okay. And so I'm going to it's helpful to begin with the end in mind. So we're going to ultimately end up where you have some specific evidence and strategies and approaches to growing, hopefully, and getting where you want to go. But let's start by talking about these two different approaches. And so, John, I'm going to turn it over to you to explore some of this traditional approach. What does that mean? How does it work? What are the characteristics of it? And what process do you use as you work with clients?
Well, thank you very much, Billy. Welcome to everybody. I'm excited to be here as well. And Billy had mentioned that the angle for this that we're after, no pun intended, because we're covering it from all angles, is to offer just good, solid information because we need good people. I started coming out with something lately that the world needs you. Not only do they need you from a medical side, if we're again, mostly physicians, no matter what you do, the world needs good people. So no matter what strategy you like, whether it's Kyle's, mine, if you just stick with Billy and do some insurance stuff, all those things are going to help you. And the other thing is all three of us have the same mindset when it comes to the end result, which is making sure that you are successful. So that is all we're after. You might like Kyle's version better. You like my version better. To answer your question, Billy, I've been doing this 30 years. Coming out now, we're in a growth mindset, which just happened. Most people are starting to wind down. I am just starting to ramp up. Reason why I'm doing it, you talked about why in the beginning, is I want to make an impact. So now we're coming back, making an impact, helping other people make an impact in their community, their lives, their families, their relationships. So do we need to get our money straight? Yes. You've got to get that portion of your life under control. You have to know what you're doing. We got to get our taxes under control so we're not giving too much money to the government. Once we get all that done, though, now you can go out and impact the world even further. So from a traditional standpoint, we look at it like you would look at, I guess, traditional financial planning, which means stocks, bonds, annuities, mutual funds, insurance products. We're in essence going to build your financial house in the next 3 weeks. So we're going to look at different areas that we feel are important for building this financial house and how we build it and what tools and products go where. But in essence, in a traditional mindset, you are going to the marketplace and you are asking somebody to help you facilitate or help you make sure you're not paying too much in taxes, or help you get the best deal on insurance, or help you pick the right investments to invest in. Kyle's going to share with you his side of things, where it's a little bit different and it's a different angle or a different approach. Again, it's a great way to go. Some people like the traditional approach. Some people are going to like Kyle's approach, which is a bit more hands-on. And I'll let Kyle explain that. But again, I just want to stress that you're in a good place with good people who are trying to do the best thing for you. And we do not have a hidden agenda. So with that, I'll introduce Kyle. Kyle,
Okay.
if that's okay with Billy.
That's totally okay. Kyle, yeah, introduce yourself and a quick overview, and then we'll circle back and have some other specific questions for John about the traditional approach. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sounds great. So I represent the non-traditional, and when I think about it, I think it's interesting that we call it non-traditional, because I would say that the stock market, mutual fund, 401k, IRA approach actually is more new than it is traditional. In 1929, for example, there were only 10% of Americans invested in the stock market. Today, we have over 60% of the nation invested in the market. So a pretty big shift. Where did people invest before? They invested in their own ideas, in their own property, in their own businesses. And, essentially what I call investing in yourself. And that's kind of the side that I represent. I feel like what actually creates wealth, what actually creates financial freedom has been and probably always will be that approach of really investing in what you know, becoming an expert at something, specializing. And it takes time and effort and money in a lot of cases, and everybody that's listening on this call understands that, as you've gone through medical school and invested in your profession, what investing in yourself looks like. So that's what we're calling that the non-traditional approach. For sure, it's less common in today's world, but the reason I represent that, and the reason I am even in this business today, is in 1999 when I started, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and many of you have probably heard that. And
Yep.
Rich Dad Poor Dad really changed how I viewed things. And I could see from my own experience, I could see that most people struggled financially. And I wanted to know why. And I think that book gave a lot of reasons. It gave a lot of answers to that question about why. And a big part of that is this, this non-traditional approach, which most people don't follow in order to create wealth. But the few that do, those are the ones that typically are becoming financially free. They're the ones that at some point their money is working for them and they're not having to work for money. And so I am passionate about it. I wrote a book about it, principles-based planning. I love teaching the principles that are related to what it means to invest in yourself and to get control and use of your money throughout your lifetime.
Hey, Kyle, can I throw something in real quick? When you were talking, I think one of the things I wrote down was, some of this is just helping people set up good habits, right? So we're trying to look and say, how do we, whether you take, and again, it's funny, we do call yours non-traditional because it's been around a heck of a lot longer than traditional, right? But it's a matter of setting up good habits and surrounding yourself with good people. So I think those are the two things that I would just throw out.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I've been kind of playing or toying with this idea of doing something like this, and it's relatively unscripted, as you can tell. We're just some people that want to leave others better than we found them. And I started getting serious about this as I've gotten to know John and Kyle, and I've known them for a while. And they're on here because of who they are as people. I've gotten to know them as people, and I like what I know. The more I know them, the more I get to know them, the more I like them, and that's a good sign. They both own their own firm, which means they call the shots on who they work with and when. They're both really successful and don't necessarily need any new business or new clients. They're not needy or greedy, as you might say. So this is their sweet spot because they're both educators and coaches. I mean, when I pick their brains about things, and they'll ask questions as much as anything else. And so they're really good at that. And so that's why they're here. And as you can tell, they're easy going and easy to probably get to like. So whether you ever talk to them again or not is totally up to you. They would certainly be good resources, but it's mainly to make sure that you get this information that you otherwise may never hear. So let's go back, John, and when we're talking about the traditional approach, can you explain your process, like how you work with clients and how that factors in when you are helping them with the questions they have? So they come to you, they're busy. They have questions about taxes. They have questions about budgeting. They have questions about reducing debt, asset protection, so many things. And they may have one or two hot buttons, but you got to get to know them first. So how do you answer the questions, meet the need for the urgency that they may feel, but at the same time, get to know them and make sure that they understand what they're doing?
Okay. Well, the first thing we do with people is we have a 15-minute conversation to kind of set the stage and go, okay, what are you thinking? Where are you? And see even if we're the right people, or if it's Kyle, or if it's somebody else that these people should be talking with. From there, we've got a 4-part process. So we bring people in and we call it something called the vision and values form. So we'll ask them a series of detailed questions about everything from, what are we trying to achieve? What's important to you about money? But really what I'm after is the perfect day. So I want to hear them describe to me what their perfect day is, because that's where some of their values will come out. So again, we look at goal planning and we look at vision and values to understand where direction we're going. Creating the financial plan is easy once you have the right, I'm going to call it blood work, if I can put it in this world. If we have the right blood work, I can look at, if I know what it is that's important to you and what you want to get there and what you're trying to achieve, it's much easier for me to craft a plan. People think, oh, I can go to this guy, ask a question, I'll get an answer. I got to get my taxes solved. He'll give me the silver bullet, and away I go. There is not a silver bullet. There is not one way to do this. You have a quiver of arrows, right? So we have a bunch of different bullets or arrows or whatever tool you want to call it that we can use for different reasons. So first and foremost, figure out what's important to them, what they're trying to do. The second thing I do, if they have a portfolio, we send it off. So this is the second meeting. We send it off and we do a detailed analysis of where they are. So it's very much an educational, hey, here's what you have. Here's how it works. Here's how this compares to what you said was important to you. You might want to be aware of this. So we're setting up something called the Lifestyle Maximizer. And that's what our process is called. It's called the Lifestyle Maximizer. Okay. And so then that's the second meeting in essence. Third meeting, we come back. Now we start to write a plan. So it's even in the third meeting before we start talking about what tools we might use from a stock, bond, annuity, mutual fund, ETF, et cetera, et cetera. That comes in down the road. Because if we go and we hip shoot this thing in the beginning, you're going to be chasing the rest of your life. And it won't be
Right.
set up properly, and we won't have good habits. And I don't want to start on page 1 and jump to page 14 without going to page 2. And then the fourth meeting is we start setting you up for success. So now we pull everything together. And really what we're after is again, for there, if I'm going to be completely honest, and some people might go, oh my gosh, that process is way too long. That first part takes about 4 weeks. It takes about a week in between. It's one of those meetings. We do a little bit of homework. You've got a little bit of homework. We come back and we pull it all together. After that first month or 6 weeks, then we put you in. We've got a year-long program where we want you to come back in quarterly. Each quarter, we're going to talk about a different subset. So we're going to go deeper into taxes. We're going to go deeper into insurance. We're going to go deeper into estate planning and wills and trusts. The fourth meeting of the year is something called Coaching for Life, and it's not with me. It's with my chief operating officer. And what she does is she walks you through and says, hey, now that everything is taken care of financially, all we have to do is tweak it from now here on out, right? So we do it right the first time, do it well the first time. We just have to tweak it from here on out. But now what you can do is you have the freedom to go do what you love to do. Okay. So this is again where it's a little bit different than Kyle's approach. Kyle's approach is assuming, I think, and Kyle, you correct me if I'm wrong, or smack me in the head, or just poke me with a stick. But if you can take the approach that, hey, I'm going to build my company, and oh, by the way, all three of us here do Kyle's approach, right? Because we all invest in our own businesses, we invest in our own people, we all have staff, so we're working our own thing. Some people, though, don't want to stay in that job. Or if they're a doctor now, they might say, you know what, I want to go be a musician, or I want to go play the violin, or I want to go do this. Great. Let's get your money taken care of. Go do that. You don't have to worry about making money because we've got a plan that's going to self-complete. So that's kind of the process. I'm after the same thing you two guys are after. I'm after impacted people. I want to see their hearts. I think what is happening today is that we don't see people's hearts anymore. We're too busy. We're too fast. We're too much in a hurry. We don't slow down. We don't let people talk. And we don't ever fully develop or mature because we're still worried about all this stuff over here. So I want to fix that stuff so you can go conquer your world and do what you want to do and make a difference on the world.
Like it. Okay. Thanks for that overview. Kyle, how do you set this up? What process do you take, and is it ongoing, and how does that play out compared to what we just heard? And it's not well, I guess ultimately it is a little bit of a comparison, but there's a different approach or philosophy, but it starts with how you see things up front, right?
I mean, if you think John's process is long, you're really not going to like my process. It's an important thing. There's so much, like when you think about personal finances, it covers so many things. We're talking about income to, what do you withhold for your taxes? How do you plan for taxes? How do you deal with every aspect of insurance? How do you deal with your debt? How do you money manage? How do you prioritize things? Saving, investing, those are all huge arenas. Estate planning, that's all part of financial planning. John and I both cover all of that. We take different approaches to that, but we cover all of that. So hopefully that makes sense why it takes a number of meetings. I don't have a set number of meetings with my clients because our goal isn't a certain number of meetings. It's, teaching, it's educating. Some people's situation is much more complex than others. And so it might require more time involved. And so there's not a time that's set. I don't charge fees. So for the time that I spend with the client, so it doesn't matter how long it takes from my point of view to help the client go through the process. Education is the key. Everybody on this call, listening to this call, understands how important education is. Education is what reduces risk. Education is what increases success or rate of return. That's true in money. It's true in medicine. It's true in pretty much every aspect of life. So our process is very educational. it's focused on learning. Our goal is to empower you. We're not trying to make you dependent on me. I would love it if when I died, every one of my clients knew exactly what they should do. They understood the principles related to money and they could navigate their financial world effectively. That's our goal, is to not only help our clients achieve financial independence, but to be independent as much as possible financially. That doesn't mean I don't want my clients to call me and discuss ideas and stuff. I think that's a major benefit to our clients. I'm sure John would say the same thing, that they call him, they call me, they want to discuss an idea that they have or something that they're trying to accomplish or a challenge they're faced with. And that's part of it. So my commitment to my clients is a lifetime commitment. We have an initial phase of planning, which I call the initial planning process. And our process is principles based. So, in other words, I don't, many of you have probably heard or read some of Simon Sinek's stuff. He wrote the book Start With Why.
Mm.
Um, he says that your why is, your purpose. It's what you're trying to accomplish. It's the reason for trying to accomplish something. And he says that that's easy to discover. If you really focus on that, you can discover that, what your why is. And both John and I have a process for helping you figure out what that is. But how you accomplish it, he says, is through your principles or your values. And I think that that's one of the big missing pieces in most of the financial planning that exists in the world today, is that it's all based on products and projections and calculations, and they're missing the principles. Principles are what lead to financial freedom. Ray Dalio, who's one of the wealthiest people on the earth today, he says in his autobiography in his first book that the most important thing he learned was an approach to life based on principles that helps him find out what's true and what to do about it. And he says
Mm.
that principles, having a good set of principles, is like having a recipe, a book of recipes that you can follow that lead to a predictable result. And I would say that the principles related to financial success haven't really changed in centuries, in the thousands of years. They haven't really changed. But there's a major lack of financial education in our formal education, and even in the financial advising world, that idea of teaching people principles just doesn't exist for the most part, which is why I created what I have and why it's different. So our process is all focused on that. Yeah, go ahead, Billy.
Have you read Richest Man in Babylon?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you
Yeah,
read
that
that,
was cool.
that is one book that when you were talking just really resonates. And I love that book too. So in essence, for people sharing or that we're sharing information with, save 10%, tithe 10%, invest 10%, and you'll never have a worry. So live below your means. That's just one principle. And I'm not trying to steal Kyle's, but that's one that I do agree that, if you create, and I call that habit. So I was interchanging habits and principles, I guess, but
He calls it habit. That's not stealing. That's not stealing. No. Nothing
No.
new under the sun here. I mean,
No.
it's all this stuff is putting this together in a way that is digestible so that someone can actually use it. Right. I mean, it's not that you guys have some, like we mentioned, silver bullet. There is no silver bullet there, at least from what I can tell. And so that's where I'm like, is there a way that, and I think that's where coaching comes in, where you can put together different pieces in the right order and the right form based on where you're trying to do and get where you want to go. And your plan may look very similar to your colleague or friend's plan, or it may look quite different.
Well,
And is there freedom in that, right? So how does that work?
well, I was going to add too, I was talking to a new client, a potential client. We were in our second meeting yesterday and just kind of going through some stuff. And she's working with big wirehouses. So when I say wirehouses, now I'm talking about Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, and she says, and I don't remember which one she has, and I won't throw any of them under the bus yet. I will later. We'll give it some time. You've got to find somebody you know, like, and trust, and somebody who is providing value that you are looking to receive. Because she asked me, she's like, How come my guy doesn't do it this way? How come my guy doesn't teach me like Kyle said? How come my guy doesn't take me through? So in our second meeting, ours is this lifestyle maximizer, where we analyze your existing portfolio from Morningstar and we teach people about it. Because I too, with Kyle and Billy, agree that if you understand where you are and you understand where you're going, you can see the steps to take to get there. I want to do money differently. I don't want to be the stuffy guy that, you walk into their office and they point their finger at you and they tell you what to do. No one wants to be shamed about money, right? So yeah, you just got to find people you know, like, and trust, and that you agree with their principles, or you agree with the habits they're asking you to create, because then you can have a symbiotic relationship. I read not too long. I mean, I did this for 15 years. 15 years ago, I saw this, and this is where I started preaching it. You go up and you look at the prospectus from some of these mutual funds. You look at Edward Jones. Okay, not a fan. I am not a fan of any big wirehouse, because what happens, any big wirehouse, I will agree with Kyle, comes down from the top. These guys are sales reps. They take what the people up above tell them, they sell them, and they get a fee. That's not an advisor. That's a salesman. 3.1 million people out there are salesmen that just wear a financial planning hat. That doesn't make them a financial planner. So if you go look at I'm going to call it a kickback. Edward Jones gets more money from American funds. I can't, just in case somebody is quoting me, I don't want to be incorrect. I know I saw the number and it was in the millions that Edward Jones receives by selling American funds. So just make sure I understand, or people understand what I'm talking about. Edward Jones top people say, hey, we really like American funds. I'll guarantee you American funds are every Edward Jones portfolio out there, because Edward Jones is getting paid from American funds to sell the American funds. So you are not getting the universe of choice. You are not getting unbiased information. You have to be careful.
It sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that both approaches, as you see them and as you present them, require some degree of involvement and attention by your client, right? So is that correct? Is that fair to say that you're going to want them to learn, so that, I mean, my concern as I think about anyone when it comes to financial planning is, or whether I'm getting, I had some estates and some trust set up for my children. I've got this business and passing it on and these kind of things. I've got a son that's on the spectrum. And so how do I handle those kind of things? I gotta do that now. I don't do that on my deathbed, right? I gotta think about those things now, and I gotta find an expert. Okay. I could look in the yellow pages for attorneys, and that doesn't mean I could find a person. That doesn't mean that it's going to actually do what I need to. So I have a guy that I've known for years, and I work with him here locally, and he is connected to a lot of people, and they do they set up trusts, they help protect assets, they make sure that there's not this frightening term I learned a number of years ago called accidental disinheritance, where I think money's going to go to certain people, but it doesn't end up there because of new marriages or lawsuits or whatever it is, right? So I say that because I had to set that up, and then I've got to learn it in such a way as so that I can teach it to my wife or to my children, so that if I get hit by a bus, they actually have some at least place to go or idea for what to do. So my question for you, and this is kind of the crux of some of what I've been wrestling with, even in doing this, and how to do it right. And because I know the people listening right now are going, why don't you just get to my question? Why don't you just get to my question? I don't want to listen to all this stuff. I want to know how to save money for my kids' college. Help me how to retire. I don't have time for all this. And so when you deal with busy people, there can be this mindset of, hey, just take it over and help me get where I want to go. And I don't want to think about it. And my question is, do you work with people like that? What do you do when someone comes to you and says, I want you to get me where I want to go, and I want to spend as little time and energy and effort as needed to figure out where that is? Because I just don't have time. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm exhausted. What do you do with that?
I tell people it also, I'll tell you one more that's similar. I get a lot of men come to me and they say, no, you don't need to meet my wife, or you'll meet her someday. It'll be okay. I don't take a meeting unless I meet both of you. Now I just have to do that once, right? Same holds true with getting past that, hey, I'm too busy and I can't do all this stuff. I totally get that. You need to sit down and do the first meeting. The first meeting, or I'm going to say for me, it's probably at least the first part of the process, right? So at least that first 6 weeks, first 4 weeks, I need you to commit about 8 hours because that's how long it's at least going to take. From there, I can talk with one person, I can talk with a spouse, I can talk with anybody, but I want to make sure everybody is on the same page first. And to your point exactly specifically about, hey, you know what, I just want you to take care of this and do it. Okay, great. But my question or my thought becomes, which direction do you want me to run? What direction do you want me to go? If I don't get a little bit more clarity, we're going to wake up in, Tasmania and not going to have any money. Yep. So we need to be clear on what it is that you want, what you're trying to achieve, when you want to get there. As far as some of the tools, you don't need to learn all that stuff. And as far as your story about your wife, Billy, in the traditional mindset, people, I can't tell you how many times come to me and say, John, I have no idea really what you're saying for the most part, but I know I trust you and I know I can come to you. And I know when I die, my wife will come to you and say, hey, will you help me? And yes, of course I can help her. And that's the important part. So finding the relationship in facilitating it. So
Kyle?
So I would just say that every single successful person that I've ever worked with is a busy person. Life is busy. I think our culture here encourages busyness almost like it's a virtue. And so people are extremely busy. It seems like technology, which was designed to save us time, actually has made it so that we have less time somehow, which is incredible. So I would just say busyness is an issue, but I would also say that, we have kind of a natural desire or natural tendency to want to look for an easy path for things. If I can go from A to B and do it in 5 minutes versus A to B in an hour, I'm going to choose the 5 minutes. But what I would say is question what you know to be true already in your life. And there's a poster behind me, a picture of Booker T. Washington, and he has a quote, and I'm not going to turn around because I probably wouldn't be able to see it very well from here anyway. But he says that nothing worthwhile ever comes to one except through hard work. And Booker T. Washington is a fantastic, in my opinion, example of success. He went from being an actual slave to being extremely successful as an American and as an American icon. Anyway, that principle I think holds true. And if you look at the things in your life that are worthwhile and enduring, I would imagine that nothing that's worthwhile and enduring in your life exists because of anything but hard work and putting time and effort into it. And I would say that the same is true for money. If you want success with money, it will take time and effort. I don't believe that the easy path exists. I would say that financial institutions try and promote that the easy path exists.
I was just say I'm going to disagree a little bit, Kyle.
Yeah,
There's an
yeah.
easier path if you want to.
Yeah. Wall Street is there, financial institution is there ready to take your money and they'll tell you what to do. For the person who's busy, I would say that they're susceptible to the easy path that's going to be presented to them. But again, I would encourage you to question in your own life if anything that is enduringly successful required very little time, was very convenient, or required little effort on your part. And I would challenge that probably nothing is the case for you in that situation.
Some of it is hard work. I often tell people though that, and again, you're handing it off. And to me, it's similar to my electrician, right? I don't want to know how to turn the light on. I just want to flip the switch and I want it to freaking work, right? That's all I care about. I don't want to go learn something else. And I think there is a big subset of people that don't want to take the time to go figure out all about money and, what it takes to be a CFP and in everything else. If they did, they would have chosen it as a profession. And I know also you do some stuff that's not related to money. You talk about investing in stuff, like real estate and investing in, your business and some other stuff. So, but I think, yes, on the traditional side, we're very much, I might say we're more so, someone's going to pay us a fee. We're going to take care of it for you, and we're going to produce some kind of outcome. Could they get better somewhere else? Maybe. Depends. Could they be more controlled? Yes. Is it going to take more work over there? Yes. But, it just depends on what you like and what you're comfortable comfortable with.
Can I add something, Billy, on that?
Go ahead.
Regarding I've had people say that, doctors actually come to me and say, well, that's why I hire a plumber. I don't want to have to be the expert in everything. And I would say, yes, I agree with the analogy. However, with a plumber, you find out pretty quickly whether they're successful or not, right? You find out, within days or maybe months that the plumbing job worked or didn't work. And I would say that, and I'm not saying John, I'm saying in general, and I think John and I had a conversation about this previously, but most financial planning, most financial advising that's given, and kind of Billy mentioned about how he figured out who he wants to work with, who he's comfortable with his clients talking to, and has narrowed it down because I think, Billy, you said that the majority of the people you've run into in this industry, you probably wouldn't want to send people to, in essence.
Yeah. I'll even agree with you on that. Some of these people, that's why I was ashamed to be calling myself a financial planner or an advisor or a wealth planner or whatever you want to. I was like, I'm not like those people. So
right.
Yes.
And the reason John's saying that and that I'm saying that is because the results, the statistics en masse are not good. Just quick example, Vanguard says that their average 401k balance for a 65-plus-year-old is $225,000. The median balance is $71,000. So for 65-plus-year-olds, and knowing that that's for the most part, for the general public, that is the major place where people are saving and quote investing for their future. The only way you can look at that is to say that it's been a massive failure, that it hasn't worked as far as being able to replace people's income. Again, I think John's going to be different. I think John's going to be more calculated, more personal, probably has a much better track record than that. But I would say in general, financial planning, the traditional hands off, hey, I'm just going to send my money, hire the plumber, so to speak, has not worked out very well. I think from a protection standpoint, when we get into strategies and stuff like that, I think Billy could also attest that most people selling insurance don't know what they're doing and they minimize it. They don't encourage the best protection that people could have. They're very price driven. They're very transactional. And at the end of the day, the individual pays a price when they do become disabled and they were told, hey, your group disability insurance is fine, and they find out maybe it wasn't.
Right.
That's a bad time to find out. So anyway, I just wanted to add to that.
Well, and even as in my spot, I don't have a dog in this fight. To be clear with everyone listening or watching, I don't work for Kyle or John. They don't work for me. There's no quid pro quo here. You're welcome to reach out to them. You'll have their contact information. You can speak with them directly. I'm just kind of the connector here and feel compelled to let you get to know who these guys are and how they function. I do think it's different. I think John's approach is going to be more familiar with what the average person is expecting. Maximize the pre-tax savings, put it in equity things, have cash on hand, get some insurance, those budgeting, those kinds of things. And I know I'm speaking for you, John, but just kind of summarizing, you mentioned kind of the stocks, bonds, annuities, and those kind of things. And kind of, but putting a process and plan around that is monitored. That's the key. The sticking the head in the sand really isn't about picking the stocks. It's about assuming everything's fine when we don't really know. And that's how you end up at 65 with the amount of money that you mentioned. Either you didn't save much, which maybe they couldn't. I don't know if the average person, I don't know if that incorporates everybody in that statistic you mentioned from Vanguard. But if a physician says, hey, I'm maximizing my pre-tax savings, I want to know, how do I handle things that go along in terms of saving for college after tax and what other accounts to do, that there's John's approach to that. And then as I think about this, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, your approach is not going to go to the market. What idea, where would people put their money when they're talking with you? I mean, if we just can you give a highlight of that? And I know we're going to talk about strategies and all that, but just a taste of things that you might recommend or that clients have done that aren't this, put it in the mutual funds and stocks and pick those kind of things.
Yeah, I'll give you a real life example. So
Okay.
one of my clients is a pharmacist, and I met with him early on when he first bought into his first pharmacy. And as we went through the planning process, the principles-based planning process, we talked a lot about investing in yourself, in your own ideas, in your expertise, in the things that you can control, the things that you can influence, which I would say, in Wall Street, you have, very little control or influence over the outcome. If you were to buy a Walmart stock, even if you put every dollar you made into it, how much could you move the needle?
Mm.
Even if you encouraged all of your friends to shop at Walmart, how much could you move the needle? You have very little or possibly even no control over the outcome. Versus like this pharmacist, he has a lot of control and influence over his pharmacy and the people he hires and the systems he uses and the marketing that he employs and all of those things. I mean, this particular pharmacist, he started out making a little over $100,000 a year when I first met with him back in 2005, I want to say. He's now making over $1.5 million per year. He has ownership in 8 other pharmacies in the Rocky Mountain area. And, he has a lot of influence and control over what happens. Initially, there was probably a lot more work and time and effort than there is currently, because he's figured out some things that he can repeat. And he can do that over and over again with different practices that he buys or pharmacies that he buys. So I would just say, if we're talking about the medical field, there's a lot of things you could do. You could invest in property. That's an easy option, right? That you don't have to necessarily spend all your time and effort. The amount of investment of time and effort is a scale, right?
Mm.
There's full-time job, right? That's
Mm.
on one end of the scale. There's very, very little time, maybe a couple hours a month. That's the other
Mm.
end of the scale. If you owned a car wash or if you owned a storage unit facility, how much time is involved in that? I've rented storage units and I've never seen the owner once at the different storage units. So I've gone into McDonald's. I've never seen a McDonald's franchise owner in the McDonald's. So the range of involvement can be very different depending on what you're interested in investing into. And it doesn't
That's
look the
good.
same for everybody. Investing to me, I would just sum this up. Investing to me means in learning. And so for me to tell somebody what they should become an expert in, I think is the wrong direction. I think they should be telling me what they want to become an expert in, what they're
Mm.
interested in investing in. And investing is a process of becoming something, by my definition.
Well, I think so that you're clearly, to me, that those are very entrepreneurial approaches to that. And I know I can think of a number of clients that would grab onto that kind of approach and just love it. Right. I mean, I gravitate to that. I mean, the hurdle rate when I invest in my own business with new technology or people, it dwarfs whatever rate of return I'm going to get in the mutual fund. There's just no comparison. And so but let's talk about the pediatrician or the hospitalist or the surgeon who's working 80 hours a week and says, hey, I don't have the energy to do what you're talking about. Is there a way, would that be someone when you go, look, it's probably just best for you to stick with some things because they both have risk, right? The stock market has risk and the return may not be there. If you buy some land, that's going to have some risk, right? I mean, you may not be able to liquidate it when you need to. You put a lot of capital in a drugstore or in a pharmacy, you better hit it right, because there's risk associated with that too, right? So how do you navigate that? And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but it's just a curious question as I think about the people that may be paying attention to this. And then we're going to go in just a minute.
So just as you were talking about that, it reminded me of orthopedic surgeon that I'm working with in Wyoming. So with this particular orthopedic surgeon, he had the opportunity to buy into a partnership
Okay.
for a clinic. And so that's an investment that he could do. You don't necessarily have to look outside of your field of expertise or become an expert in something else. I would say that probably over the next 10, 15, 20 years, think about what might be invented in your field of expertise. What opportunities might exist in your field of expertise. I would say that by far the majority of those things that will be invented will come from people who are in your field of expertise. They're going to come from doctors, because the doctors are going to be the people saying, hey, I wish I had this, or I wish we could do this, and they're going to come up with that idea that's some multi-million-dollar idea and be able to run with that. And I can give you even more details on that or examples related to that, but not today. I know, not today. But I'm just telling you that there's opportunity within your own expertise.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I know we were all over the place, but I feel like we covered some good content, and we'll dial it in next time as we go further and start talking about kind of the why behind and getting into specifics about how to design a plan for yourself. And then we'll get into strategies in the session after that. So look forward to it. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for your time, guys. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for today. The next episode will be session 2 of the educational series called Financial Goals and Personal Values. Tune in soon. In the meantime, please feel free to contact me. You can text me at 704-270-2376. Again, 704-270-2376. As always, I'm grateful for your time. Reach out anytime. Happy to help any way I can.
Thanks for listening to the Cover Your Assets podcast, a Work P2P production. New episodes drop every 2 weeks. If you've enjoyed the conversation, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. For more tips and advice, visit the website and YouTube channel. Check the show notes for links. Join us next time for another episode dedicated to helping physicians like you get your disability insurance right and protect your way of life.